There's nothing more defeating than thinking that you did the hardest thing by getting out of that toxic relationship, only to discover that the battle is not over, that you have another huge mountain to climb that may feel pretty impossible, not only because the person that you're leaving is so sophisticated and knows how to present better than you do, but because they're probably going to outspend you as well, and they have limited your access to money so that you feel outgunned, outmanned, and outpowered. So today we're going to talk about why narcissists win in court and what you can do about it. So I'm really excited to have you join me today. I'm Dr. Carrie McAvoy. I am a clinical psychologist with over 25 years of clinical experience in a variety of settings. And we're going to be talking about what you can do differently when you prepare to go into court so that you are not in such a severe disadvantage, because honestly you are going in with a disadvantage. That is a fact, because as a victim you will feel dysregulated, you feel traumatized, you feel shook up, and you also feel that the situation has been tremendously unfair, and you're going to have to face down the person who's done the abusing of you, the perpetrator, the person who puts you in this terrible state when you walk into that courtroom, or when you walk into the attorneys, or when you see any communication between their attorney and your attorney, between them and you. So let's break it down. Today we're going to get into what is the main objective in family court. We're going to talk about what the big questions court are asking regarding assets and community property, but also regarding custody. We're going to talk about why narcissists present so well in court and why victims present so poorly in court. And then we're going to talk about um, what victims often do wrong in court, what their motives often are that ends up kind of defeating them and going in the wrong direction. And we're going to finally wrap it up, how to have better strategies, how to have winning strategies when you walk in and you face either your attorney, or you face the judge, or you face some sort of like either ad litem, I'm thinking like the ad litem guardian, or whoever it is that you're facing down. I want to help you to present better so that you're not at a disadvantage when you walk into the court situation. So, and I also want to talk about agendas and issues you should not take into court, because often we end up, because we don't understand the purpose and we're so dysregulated and feel very like there's been no justice for us, we often accidentally bring in the wrong issues, which then either sort of obscure the facts or put you at a severe disadvantage because it makes you look bad. And if we have time, I want to jump into some buzzwords that you should avoid and what you can say instead if you go into court. So, because often you're not a psychologist, unfortunately, so there's words that you just can't legitimately use because you're looking like or some words just come from social media that even as a psychologist, see myself, I would think I wouldn't use that word, even though I know that we all know what it means. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean that the judge knows what it means, but it also just sort of sets the wrong tone and it sets the wrong impressions. So I'm so excited that you're here. If you've never joined my live before, I always take the last 15 to 20 minutes to take your questions. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are. And if you know somebody today that maybe is facing this situation right at this moment, maybe they're going into court this week or next week or this month, and that maybe you should invite them today to be able to hear this. Maybe they're feeling terribly hopeless and hopeless. I know so many of you that I speak to feel that way when you're in this situation. You feel like it's all stacked up against you and you don't know what else to do. So I really want to encourage those. If there's somebody that you know and that you love that needs encouragement, you might want to send them a link to this live today so that they can hear this and be encouraged. And if not, it does live forever on some of my social media channels. So just check with me how you can find it. I'd be happy to share that with you. So let's dive into what is the main objective in family court. I can tell you what it is not. It is not there to decide whether or not you've been in an abusive situation. That's not the point of it. It's also not a criminal or civil trial. So you're not going to be able to say this person harmed you or this person has done things that are illegal against you. So in other words, you're not going to find justice in court, in family court, even though I'm not saying you don't deserve justice. You absolutely deserve justice. But unfortunately, that is not the setting. And if you go in looking like that, you come off looking antagonistic, like you're a person who has a vendetta, who can't let things go. And you also look like you can't focus on the big issues. So it's really important when you step into that setting that you know what the biggest issues are so that you can be able to present in a way that puts your best foot forward. So in a normal divorce case, the biggest questions in play in these each of the situations is division of assets. They want to know what is there to divide, what's marital versus separate property, and what's a fair division, and is spousal support necessary, and were there any agreements in place around this relationship like prenuptial or postnuptial agreements. Those are the big questions that they're wanting to know when you walk in for a divorce. Let me say them again. What assets are there to divide? What is marital versus separate property? What would be a fair division based upon the debts, based upon the amount of time you guys have been together, based upon the state law and your circumstances? Is spousal support necessary? And like, does one party need ongoing financial support? And if so, for how long and for how much? And is there any type of agreement like prenuptials or postnuptial agreements in place that may affect the outcome? Now, here's some things that are really unfair. And I know that I faced this situation when I was going through my divorce and I got super lucky, unfairly lucky. I know that. I know that if I had walked in, it would not have gone well for me. My partner lost his job right at the beginning of our marriage. And because I happened to have I started a business with him and I was the principal holder of the business, then that meant I was the person holding, majority of the assets. And he was then working with me in the business. I know that if that had happened in the United States and that we hadn't worked out a private agreement between the two of us, he would have probably applied for spousal support, even though I felt that he already took from me. I felt that he was stealing from me. He certainly didn't carry his weight in the business, although I know he thought he did. But I worked I worked 16 hours a day. He worked maybe 8, and he played a lot. If you know what I mean, right? And I know he would have still walked in because he was just that kind of person who would have said, I deserve spousal support because I have no job and I didn't take a job in order to support her, even though he tried to take a job and it fell to pieces because this person didn't know how to hold down a job and be very responsible. So I know that if a judge had heard my situation, they probably would have made me pay him spousal support for some period of time. It's unfair. It's terribly unfair. When you're the person who's been the main provider and you have somebody who's leeching off of you, and I know some of you are going to say, here's the other part that's really hard. Some of us, because the opposite situation often happens. I just got a comment on one of my videos today where one party has been encouraged by the other not to work. They maybe even have blocked their ability to work. They've encouraged them not to get further education. They've asked them to stay home and take care of the family. And then when there's a divorce, they say, well, you contributed nothing. I did all the work, sort of negating all the work that that person has done at home, raising the kids and raising taking care of the household, all that unpaid labor that we now know is often more than a full-time job. And this person now says, you don't deserve any of the money I made because I made it in my name. And you were at home as if you were playing. Like, no, you weren't. So that's a completely different situation. So please don't hear me saying anything negative about that. I'm not. I'm just saying what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how I'm saying. What I'm saying is people who like to take unfair advantages of other people will always find some angle to argue. Whether it's they leached off of you, like in mine, where he was very parasitic and he didn't work much and he did a lot of messing around on work hours and probably embezzled from the company. He would claim he deserves something from me, whereas there's opposite people who have done really hard work, holding down the home, making this person look good, maybe even supporting them while their partner goes through college or graduate school or professional school. And then when it comes at the end of the day, their partner, who's been the one out having the job, says, you deserve nothing. So I know that predatory people, I guess that's the best way to say it. Predatory people will take any argument and argue it in their favor, making you look bad. So, though, but just hold on to those are the big questions that you need to keep clear in your mind when you walk into family court. So what I would do if I was in your situation is I would make sure I knew what the assets were. Get copies, if you can, of deeds, accounts, account balances, know how many accounts there are. Definitely have account numbers. Walk in informed. Know when these accounts were opened. Know what you contributed. Keep a record of all the work that you've done, whether it's at home on the home front or whether it's at some kind of a job, but really keep a very detailed record. Make a note of that person's debt load and assets when they walked into the relationship. Make a note of what your debt load and assets were when you walked into the relationship. For example, in my situation, I walked in with no debt and my partner walked in with debt and I paid his debt off. Do you think he would remember that when we were dividing up the assets at the end, that he was walking out with no debt because he met me? Of course not. Of course not. So always expect this person to be antagonistic and predatory and definitely exploitative. Anticipate that. Okay, so here's what they're going to be looking at the big questions in a custody decision. It's always about the best interest of the child. Now, again, I know this feels crazy because you're like, well, the partner wasn't good to me. So is that really in the best interest of the child for them to be parenting this person when they're not good as a partner? I know that's a big question. Courts don't see it that way. Just please realize the courts don't see it that way. But here's the questions that the court's going to be asking. What arrangement will serve this child's best interest? Now, there's your version of what you think would be the best arrangement, but that's not how the court's going to see it. They're going to try to be fair and equitable to the degree that they can. So please be aware of that, that's just a natural bias of court. Here's another question they're going to be asking. Who's been the primary caregiver? So who historically has spent most of the time at home providing safety, stability, and emotional support? And which parent's ability is best able to meet the child's needs? And how safe is each parent's environment? And which parent supports the child's relation? Oh, this is a hard one, guys. Which parent supports the child's relationship with the other parent? And what does the child want? Now, the younger the child is, that will be considered less important. And the older they get, like a closer to adulthood, the more important that one is. But be aware that these are the questions that are likely to be asked in these situations, just so that you know, so that you're prepared when this happens. So I noticed what I said there. I never mentioned um, whether or not this person is a good person to you, or whether or not there's what they're in. There's a whole bunch of questions you can hear when I said those that weren't taken into account. So please be aware that this is really tough because you may go in and say they've been a terrible partner to me. There's no way they're going to be a good partner to this child. But the court, frankly, doesn't just see it that way. They see, in fact, the fact that you're raising that issue and being difficult around it, they're saying, yeah, but you're not playing nice, because we want to know whether or not the two of you can coordinate efforts towards the good of this child. And by the way, one of the reasons, and I'm going to get into this in much greater detail, one of the reasons why narcissists win in court is because they are masters at image management. I want to say that again because I really want you to hear me, because this is what you have to do too. You have to get better at image management. That means there's things that you're not going to say. There are things you're going to present in a certain way. You're going to really think about what you say, why you say it, and how you say it, because narcissists and people who are very predatory are masters at image management. They play this game way better, and they play it all the time, everywhere, with everyone. And that's why when they walk into court, they look so good. They are more interested over present. Unfortunately, the court can only think of the court as like a snapshot in time. It's giving you have a few hours to make your best performance. That's really what it is. And courts reward presentation over lived reality. So if you're a master performer, you're going to perform better at when the reward is master presentations. They're masterful at presentations. They just, unfortunately, the courts don't have the time. They don't have the resources. Often, a lot of them just don't have the psychological know-how or tools to really dig into the relational history. Instead, it's relying on this brief snapshot as a way of to measure who you are, what your capabilities are, what you're going to be like as a co-parent or as a separated person from this person. So if you seem combative, which a lot of us are so angry and so looking for closure, that we end up appearing like we're not cooperative, like there's something wrong with us. We end up looking like there's that we're not going to do well in this situation. So be very, very aware that this is unfortunately the bias of the court, so that you don't get in trouble when you step in to these situations. I don't want you in trouble when you're trying to present these situations, because it's paramount. I know that you deserve to come out ahead. I really believe that. So here's what a narcissist has that really plays to their strength when they walk into court. They have a polished facade. They know how to charm. They're very good at flattering. They're very good at projecting calm confidence under pressure. They're also good at masking volatility until they get behind closed doors. So you know that. You know this person doesn't let the boss know what they're like at home. You know what they're like at home, but the boss doesn't. Everybody in the neighborhood thinks that your partner, your ex-partner, has been the most awesome, upstanding person. They truly cannot believe the things that you're saying about them. And so this is like a master performance of their life. They walk in and they go on with that polished facade. I mean, mine was down to the point he would talk about having a custom suit designed just for him, and that he didn't want any pets in the house, for God forbid he gets any like it's fur on his, any kind of fur or something on his jacket. So they're very, I mean, oh, he was right down to how he like took care of his nails, and he whitened his teeth, and his hair was always impeccable. I mean, they're so good at this when they want to be. They're also very good at narrative control. They're extremely skilled at reframing events in order to make themselves look reasonable and calm, and at the same time make you look unstable, overreactive, and vindictive. And they're very strategic in their self-control. They know how to keep their tempers in check in public setting, which is why they do so well when they're buttering up the boss. But it's, when it's clear that the opinion of the audience matters, they're on and they shine. And they're also very good at manipulating through documentation. They will keep a carefully curated view of evidence that supports their version of the events, while admitting the context that expose a pattern of abuse. You know that. You've seen how if there's a way for them to flip it, they're going to flip it. I recently heard somebody said that this partner is extremely almost suspicious and controls the kid's presentation in the supervised visits. One of the kids came to a supervised visit and had an injury on a finger or an appendage, and the other parent asked to see it, and the parent, who's the one who's controlling everything, said, no, you're not allowed to see it. And you know what? The other parent pushed to see it because they cared, because the kid wanted them to see it. And you know what? Now they look like they're the bad parent for asking. Know that these types of moments are setups. These individuals who are predatory and exploitative are very good at spotting ways of twisting things and making you look like the bad parent, that you have an agenda and that you're breaking the rules, while they meanwhile break the rules everywhere, and then turn around and flip it and say some victim story about why they couldn't do the situation any differently than the way that they did. So just know this person's masterful at manipulation and masterful at changing the narrative. Here's why victims often present poorly in court. Unfortunately, because you have been traumatized, you often feel extremely dysregulated, and you also have this is a person who's traumatizing you. This is a person who's been abusive to you. I know that if I had to walk in and stare down my ex across some room and talk about what went wrong in front of him, knowing how I know him and the ability to read him and know what it would have risked, what I was putting myself in jeopardy, I would have Well, in fact, I had to stare him down and do a few of that a few times in other situations, and my hands would shake, my mouth was dry, struggled to be able to even find the right words to say what I want. I mean, I had a hard time stringing words together, and the reason for this is because your flight or fight system is active, and when it's active, it's preparing you to deal with an emergency, not to give a presentation. So as a result of it, you struggle, your executive functioning, the part of you that has to do with how you come across is not in this best frame. You're not thinking clearly. You're not able to access memory in the same way. You're not able to organize your thoughts in a very logical way because you're in a fight or flight state. So you often show up visibly anxious and distressed because you've been in hyper alert and you're intimidated. You often over explain and you ramble because you're feeling like pressured to get it all out, because you feel unfocused, you're struggling to find organization, you're horribly reactive. Just even hearing your partner's name, the abusive person's name, is enough to trigger you. And you often will either go into flat out like overdrive, or you shut down and start to dissociate. So as a result, your evidence looks disorganized, and you're extremely triggered the entire time and in a hard time presenting yourself. And on top of it, probably you're having a little bit of what I call white coat syndrome, which is the fact that you're standing before another authority, even though maybe this judge or whoever you're meeting with has never abused you. You're anticipating, just like you did with the abusive person, being misread, being criticized, being put down, being hurt. Because you're anticipating that, then you're already reacting defensively before even something bad has happened. And that's because you started to associate authority with danger. And this is a new form of authority, and you feel like you're in danger again. So, unfortunately, because this is just such a very volatile situation, it takes extra preparation. And I really want to spend some time and talk about that. But before I get into that, did you know that you could get help for this kind of stuff by joining the Toxic Free Relationship Club? I would love to have you guys be a part of that. We meet 6 times each week. There are 3 co-hosts with live group sessions where you can come in and present what's going on, get support and validation, encouragement, or maybe you're just looking for tech support so you can meet other people. There we have a chat community, but we also, some of us offer, myself as well, VIP status where we give you one-on-one coaching along with group coaching. So if you're one of these high pressured situations and you really need extra support, really consider the Toxic Free Relationship Club. So what happens when we walk into these courts misguided? What do we often end up inadvertently seeking that's the wrong things to pursue when you're stepping into court? So one is, victims often think, I want the courts to see that my partner or this person's been the abusive one. They often think that if they can prove this person's been manipulative, controlling, and cruel, that the judge is going to automatically rule in their favor. But you have to remember that family court's not designed to litigate moral character unless it's directly tied to safety or parenting capacity. I know in your mind it does, that an abusive person shouldn't be parenting children. I get that. But that's not a connection that court sees or recognizes. So you trying to say they're abusive to me, don't think that that then means they're abusive to the kids. The courts see that as a different question. It's not the same question. Abuse to you in the court's eye does not mean they're abusive to the kids, even though in common everyday reality, common day sense, we would say, well, duh, of course. If he's not good with me, when he doesn't like what he or she hears from me, why would he or she be any better with kids? Why would they be better with minors who are very intense and extremely needy? I understand that, but just know that unfortunately the courts don't make that connection. Here's the error number 2 that many victims make walking into court. They want justice for what's happened to them. They want emotional validation. They want accountability from this person because this person's never been held accountable. They sort of see the higher courts as the authority to find, she's supposed to be truth and justice, right? So we often end up making that our primary goal, but unfortunately, that is not the objective of family court. So it will end up, you will feel defeated and frustrated, and it won't happen if that's what you walk in looking for. Unfortunately, that has to be something that you seek elsewhere, maybe finding closure by working with a private coach or by connecting with somebody like me, that working through that and finding your way to be able to find your own closure that you need. Number three, we often want courts to expose their lies. Often we end up bringing reams and reams of paperwork trying to show this person's a habitual liar and that this is going to affect everything that we know, like the around the properties or around the custody issues. But a lot of these evidence of deception and lies and misdeeds, the courts just view as irrelevant or just sees it as you being vindictive, as if you have something that's like you're out for this person and you can't let things go. Seen this personally, where when you're really feeling like this person's a bad person, they're really pathological, they're not safe, and then you bring in lots and lots of records, like hundreds of pages of records. And unfortunately, courts like, they can't make sense of it. It's overwhelming. And then on top of it, it ends up looking like you never can let anything go. And what the court fails to take into account, and this is what I understand as a clinician, the courts fail to take into account is that you've never had a voice, that you have had maybe weeks, months, or years to decades of this person misleading you, betraying you, deceiving you, taking advantage of you, and you're just looking for your day to say, stop, this was wrong, all of this is wrong. But unfortunately, it just looks like you're an angry person who doesn't let anything go. So be very careful about that. Number four is you want to prove that you were the better spouse. In custody cases, that's not the question. Like, they don't care who was the better partner, who was the better husband or wife in the situation. They just want to know, can you guys coordinate to meet the children's needs now? Do you have it within you to take care of the kids right at this moment? So you trying to litigate what happened in that marriage and who was the better partner, who was the more honest partner, ethical partner, it just muddies the case up and makes it and confuses the details. And again, makes you look like you are vindictive and angry. Number five is you feel like if I could tell my story, then the courts will understand. So you present this long narrative about what happened in the relationship when judges don't have the time. Their time is extremely short and their time is extremely expensive. And what they want is just the relevant evidence tied to the legal factors that they're asking. So long emotional accounts end up inadvertently and undermining your credibility. And number six, once the courts hear me, they'll protect me. We will often think if they just could understand what was happening, then they're going to take my side and then make sure I'm taken care of. Well, they can only act within the bounds of law. And even when there's a clear abuse, the legal definition may not be met. That's the hard part. You can have abuse, but it may not legally, maybe the definition of it legally may not have been achieved. I know I'm dating myself, but this is a good example with O.J. Simpson. They couldn't prove criminally that he was involved in the death of Nicole. But what they were able to, because the legal definitions were easier to me in a civil court, they were able to win a civil suit. So just know that in these situations, there may be clear, just because the courts don't say, yes, I agree, it meets the legal definition, doesn't mean you weren't being abused or hurt in that relationship or betrayed by that relationship. Okay, so what do you do to go into these situations so that you can actually really win? How do you come out ahead in these situations? I want to get into that next, but I also want to let you know something. I'm super excited about the fact that I just recently discovered that I can now have direct contact with you guys and be able to share like news and research. I can share tips and journals and things that are very, very helpful to you. So if you're interested in receiving those things from me, I would love you to have you sign up either through Facebook or Instagram. It's called Direct from Dr. Carrie. It's free, and I'm going to communicate at least 3 times every week with reflective questions, ask polls, and also share just the latest research and news with you. So if you'd like to stay current on what's happening in this whole arena, be sure to check that out. And you can sign up on both, like I said, Facebook and Instagram. It's at carriemcavoyphd.com. Okay, so what's the winning strategies that we should employ in family court? I want you, there's seven different strategies and objectives. And so we're going to go through them. First of all, I want you to think like a judge. I know that's a hard one. So frame everything around those main questions. You may even want to go back to where I started the live today, where I said the main questions for divorce is this, and the main questions in custody are that. Go back and ask yourself those main questions, and then frame everything around those main questions. So in the divorce, the questions are: is what is equitable and what is legally yours? And you can't just say it feels like mine or it should be mine. You have to prove that it's yours. And in custody, the main question is what's in the child's best interest, and tie everything, every statement, and every evidence directly to those priorities. Number two, be concise and relevant. You avoid the long emotional narratives with short, fact-based statements. I want you to stick to observable dates, times, actions, and outcomes. Let me tell you that again. Dates, times, actions, and outcome. Avoid I can't say that word. Avoid generalities like he's manipulative. Instead, give examples. So instead, you'd say he's manipulative. Instead, I want you to say on March 12th, he failed to pick our kids up from school as agreed. So notice how that's date, time, actions, and outcome. Number three, I want you to document everything like a journalist, not a storyteller. You want to organize the facts chronologically and by themes around missed visitations, unsafe behaviors, financial misconduct, and label exhibits clearly so the judge can scan it and understand it quickly. See, remember, think of brevity, think of overview. For one of the examples I thought of that might be really helpful, a lot of you have just reams of, of incidences that happened, and they're like, on this day they yelled, or on this day they screamed at the kids, and this day they missed picking the kids up like by 20 minutes or whatever. You have all of this. Think about organizing it in main categories. Like if you were to run it through some AI, and say, find the legal explanations for what's going on in these what's going wrong around all this data. Put it into like five organized points, and then use the stories to back it up. Like, this person is inconsistent and doesn't follow through on expectations and agreements. And then have all the dates that line up, all the evidence that lines up for each one of those, so that they're coordinated. So the judge could see, oh, okay, this person lacks follow through. They don't comply with the court's requirements. They are combative and antagonistic. And then you can be able to go over and say, and then if you want evidence, they can see these pages for these dates. See these pages for these dates. Now, chances are they may never look at that because they don't have time to look at that, but at least it gives you the ability to synthesize it into one face sheet that's easy to scan and very easy to read. Number four, here's the hard one. I know this is really hard. Practice composure. Anticipate this person's going to lie about you, that they're going to be so provocative, and they're going to extremely calm, and they're going to say the most horrible things about you that are very, very inaccurate and paint you in the worst picture. Expect that. That's the game. That's what's happening. Just because it's said out loud doesn't make anybody believe it. So don't react as if you need to defend. You don't need to defend yourself. That's not your job. Your job is to present yourself as calmly and as eloquently as you possibly can. I want you to keep a neutral tone, keep your body language calm, and let your evidence, when it's your turn, did you hear me? Your turn, speak for yourself. Don't interrupt. Don't react. Don't go, what's that about? I can't believe, what are you talking? Don't do that. Don't do that. It hurts you when you do that. It makes you look reactive, unstable, and it makes you look combative. Everything that you don't want to be when you're in that court. So don't do that. Practice composure and don't react to their provocation and their lies. They're going to lie. They're going to stretch the truth. They're going to flip things in a completely weird way that was nowhere aligns with the truth at all. Expect that. That's going to happen. So practice composure. Number four. Number five, demonstrate reasonableness. So show a willingness to the court that you're willing to cooperate within safe limits. Judge often reward parents who appear the most reasonable and child focused. Avoid reaction, avoid retaliatory language both in court and in written communication. I don't know if you watched this week's podcast that's on it's on audio as well as video with former associate judge Michelle Locke. In fact, I'm having Michelle Locke come live. She's going to do a live stream with me on YouTube and Facebook for October. I think we said October 14th. I'm trying to remember what day. Let me pull it up. I can tell you it's a second Tuesday in October. We're going to go live for an hour and a half and take your questions on the 14th, October 14th. Michelle Locke, who is a Texas family law attorney, active family law attorney. She's also a litigator because in Texas, family law litigates. Believe it or not, they go in and they have a jury trial for custody. She's also a litigator and she's also a judge. She's a sitting judge. So if you would like a judge's opinion on these cases, and if you haven't heard it, you got to check the audio or the video podcast. She is a hoot and a holler. I love this woman. She is the most down home, realistic person, tells you the truth, but she's also extremely approachable and very warm herself. So if you would like to get clear advice, be sure to mark your calendar for October 14th. We're going to go from 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time to 5 o'clock Central Standard Time. We're going to do an hour and a half live, and it's for free. And you guys can join and ask your biggest questions. So I want you to practice reasonableness. Avoid being reactive. Here's number 6. Prioritize your child's safety and stability. So link your concerns. Here's a hard one. I know you, in fact, Michelle Locke in that interview said, you have to be on the game. You got to be playing as hard as they are in this. Which I know feels really weird and strange and made me feel like a bit deceptive or manipulative anyway. It's like maybe not in your character, but link your concern with the other parent's concerns with the child's welfare. That you both agree you don't want those children hurt. You both agree that you want your children to feel loved and supported. I know you don't believe that about the other partner. I know that you think this person doesn't show up well, but link your concerns. If they act concerned, you say you're concerned. You're concerned together. Link your concerns together. Offer concrete child-focused solutions instead of pointing out the problems. Did you hear me? Offer child-focused solutions instead of only pointing out the problems. And number 7 is work with a trauma-informed attorney or advocate that can help you best represent yourself, to best present what coercive control is, and help translate your experience into a legally persuasive language. A good resource for this, by the way, is Bill Eddy. Bill Eddy is going to come to the Toxic Free Relationship Club in March and speak to the members in a free Q&A to all Toxic Free Relationship Club members. Again, that's another reason to join, is that we have quarterly club-wide events with experts like Bill Eddy and Michelle Locke. She's also been there as well. So here are some things you need to avoid in court. These are things to avoid in court. I want you to not look for healing or emotional validation in court. This is not a place to process your grief, your betrayal, or your trauma. Seeking any kind of emotional acknowledgement from the judge always will end in disappointment. That's best for you to save to survivor groups or for your therapy or for a trusted relationship. Number 2, don't look for moral or social judgment of the abuser. They're not going to label your partner abusive, toxic, or evil because it doesn't matter. They're looking at this from a legal angle only around custody or division of assets. So don't try to get some kind of moral verdict around the vindictiveness of this person. Instead, again, do that work on your own elsewhere. Number 3, don't look for any punishment or past mistake relationship wrongs. Any infidelity or betrayal or emotional cruelty, even though it's been devastating to you, it is not going to have any play in the legal issues in most jurisdictions. Court decisions are forward-looking, problem-solving, not punitive. Number 4, don't look for a full relationship autopsy. They're not going to help you look at what happened and why this happened and whether or not this person's a good person or not a good person. That to them, they see as background noise that just is irrelevant. Don't look for, number 5, changing the narcissist personality or behavior. Don't look for the court to somehow enforce certain kind of actions, like make them more cooperative, make them more kind or empathic, or make them go to therapy. It's rarely effective with a narcissist. Instead, look for enforceable boundaries. Don't look for justice or how other people see it. Don't care about how other people see it. You're not going to be able to control the narcissist smear campaign in court unless it somehow crosses into the realm of legal definition of defamation or custodial interference. And number 7, don't force any truth-telling moment. Courts don't like stage confessions. They rule on evidence. So don't try to orchestrate some big dramatic reveal. It just ends up making you look manipulative. Here are some buzzwords for you to avoid in court and what you should say instead. Don't use the word gaslighting. Instead, say, this person denied prior agreements and claimed I've imagined them. Say it like objectively. Describe what happened. I'm going to say it again. They denied a prior agreement and instead claimed that I imagined them. That's how you describe gaslighting. Number 2, avoid the word narcissist or narcissistic abuse. These are diagnostic or semi-clinical terms. Only a professional like myself is able to admit such evidence, and I could never do it in my own case because I can't diagnose my partners or family members. So you'd need a professional's evaluation to be able to admit these words into evidence, and they're often treated when you use them as if they're a character attack. Instead, say, they repeatedly belittled me in front of the children and ignored agreed upon parenting schedules. So again, describe the behavior. In fact, I think Dr. Ramani talks about she has an acronym, I think it's called CRAVE, CRAVE. I don't know what it stands for, but it's her recommendations how to go into court and present well. Don't go in and use the word number 3, coercive control. It's still poorly understood, even though it's now recognized in some jurisdictions. Instead, define the actual controlling behaviors instead of naming the pattern. So say, she monitored my phone calls, restricted my access to money, and discouraged me from seeing my friends. That's the way to describe it. Number 4, don't say the word trauma bond or Stockholm syndrome. Courts want facts on conducts, not complex concepts. Instead, saying, after the threats, I felt pressured to stay because this person alternated between affection and intimidation. Number 5, don't use the word triggered or trigger. It comes off as like you're oversensitive, and it's not, again, it's not factual. Instead, you want to say, when he raises his voice, I became visibly upset and I lost my train of thought. Don't use the word gaslighter or manipulator. These are conclusions. You want to stick to examples. Instead, say, he misrepresented my work schedule to the school so that I missed important meetings. Number 7, don't use the word love bombing or hoovering. Instead, say, in our arguments, after our arguments, she would send expensive gifts and promise to change. Don't use the word number 8, pathological liar. Again, you need proven, documented false statements. So instead, saying, she told the court she never missed visitation, but I have 3 dates. The school records show otherwise. Number 9, don't say this person's toxic. It's too vague and it sounds reactive. Instead, say, his behavior caused our child to become fearful and avoid being at home. Number 10, don't say the word victim or survivor. Although it's accurate, stick to, I experienced this or this occurred. So say something like this. During our marriage, I experienced repeated incidences of verbal aggression and financial withholding. Number 11, don't say the words boundaries or boundary violations. Instead, explain the rule and agreement and how it got broken. So you might want to say, I told him not to enter my house without permission, but he entered when I was at work. Number 12, don't use the word flying monkeys. This sounds like some pop culture reference and doesn't describe the specific incidences of interference by third parties. So instead, say, she asked her sisters to call my friends and tell them that I was mentally unstable. Number 13, parentification or parentified. Don't use, again, you're not a parent. That's a very clinical term. It's something that a clinician would use describing children's behavior. Instead, you'd say, he required our 9-year-old to manage the household laundry and care for the younger siblings while he was away. Number 14, don't use the word emotional abuse. Instead, describe exact behaviors. So like name calling, threats, or intimidation. So say something like, he called me degrading names multiple times a week in front of our children. And number 15, stonewalling or silent treatment, which is, I know you're trying to describe a refusal to respond or a lack of cooperation, but instead say, she refused to respond to any of my parental questions for 3 weeks, despite multiple emails and texts. So how do you best prepare? I want to get into that, and then we'll take your questions. You best prepare by rehearse your composure. Expect them to smirk, to glare, or to use any type of subtle intimidation tactics. If you want to like see how that looked, go back and look at P. Diddy when Cassie was testifying. Expect that and keep your composure. Keep your eye on your judge or the attorney, not on the partner. Practice neutral body language. Keep your shoulder back, your chin up, and use slow, steady breaths. Number 2, use grounding techniques before, during, and after court. So before you enter, take several slow, deep breaths. Focus on a physical anchor, like maybe touching a ring that's important floor, or maybe pressing your thumb and forefingers together. And when you panic, start to feel panic, name 3 things that you can see, 2 things you can hear, 1 thing you can feel to help pull yourself back to the present. Number 3, separate the person from the process. Remember, this is a court. This is not your relationship. You're here for a legal proceedings. There's rules, structures, and oversight. This is not an uncontrolled environment where this person can dominate. Number 4, limit contact points. Arrive early so you're not rushing or ambushed in the hallway. Ask the bailiff, advocate, or friend to walk in with you and position them between you and your abuser if possible. Number 5, dress for confidence, not battle. Wear clothes that help you feel grounded and professional without anything that's too distracting or is going to use to stereotype you. Keep accessories to a minimal. Keep your body language neutral and so that you shine as who you really are. Number 6, control your story. Don't try to control theirs. They're going to lie. They're going to twist the facts. Expect it. Instead of reacting in real time, jot a quick note down, address it through your attorneys, or when it's your turn to speak. Number 7, build a pre and post court routine. Before court, have a calm breakfast, maybe take a short walk, do maybe meditation or some deep breathing. After court, meet up with supportive people, do a calming activity, maybe meet with your therapist. Don't go straight back to work or go isolate at home. Your nervous system needs time to decompress after these moments. So I know that I covered a whole lot, and I know these situations are really, really rough. And I also know they're super, super unfair. So I want you to win. This is my ultimate goal. And it's very important for me to feel like you have the resources to do that. So let's turn it over to take your questions now. So what are your top questions as you've been listening to me describe this? Um, what's gone wrong, or where you feel really confused, and how can I help you? And if you would like a dedicated time to present your issue and work with me for the next 6 weeks, starting next week, Tuesday, I'm meeting with 6 women for 6 weeks. We're going to have 75 minutes. We're going to be able to work on your top problem to help you break the obstacles, find new ways to be able to communicate, find a better, more confident voice and composure. If you'd like to do that, it's called a relationship reset workshop. It starts next week. I'm offering a 10% discount for those who last minute sign up. So if you'd like to learn more, please reach out to me. I'd love to tell you about it. So what kind of questions you guys have that you're struggling with right now? Oh, thank you so much, Leslie. My moderator found out what CRAVED stands for with it stands for, you describe narcissism as conflictual, rigid, antagonistic, vindictive or vulnerable, entitled, and dysregulated. Those are the ways that you describe narcissistic behavior without having to actually say this person's a narcissist. Let me go over that again. And I know Dr. Ramani has videos on this, but it's conflictual. You use the words to describe conflictual person, a rigid person, someone who's antagonistic. In other words, won't find any middle ground with you. They're either they paint themselves as a victim, but don't use the word victim. They paint themselves as vulnerable or vindictive. They're entitled and they're dysregulated. Those are the words that you want to use when you're using in court. So what kind of questions you guys have that for us to talk about today? I'm trying to see if there's any questions that I can pull up that's come up. If you, excuse me, if you asked a question earlier, why don't you ask it again? Because now I can focus on it. I've read your book and I really liked it. Do you recommend any others for self-education? There are a lot of really good books for self-education. One of the new ones that I've come across with is, and I'm looking at it, it's over there. I can't grab it. It's called, there's a word for that. The title is There's a Word for That. Her name is Ellen Tift, Tift, Ellen, Ellen. It's on Amazon. It just came out. It's a reference book that describes what happens in relational trauma. She gives you the word, and then she also gives you practices to help you combat the symptom. So say for example, you feel dissociated and out of touch with your body or in your sense of self. Then she gives you practices. She's a college professor and of what you can do to get back in touch with yourself. So I really like that book. It's not a book that you would read. It's more of a book that you would use for reference. So if you're looking for a really good reference of trauma like symptoms, and how to cope with trauma like symptoms, it's an excellent book. Another one I really like a lot is Dr. Ramani's book, It's Not You. She has a lot of practical advice in it. I particularly like her chapter 5, where she gets into lists like your biscuit and bread list. I'm sorry, biscuit and bed. I don't know why I said that. Biscuit and bed list. Also your ick list. She's got all sorts of things that she talks about. It's just really solid recommendations that she makes in that book. I'm trying to think of other ones. Oh, I love George Simon. I just think he's an amazing author. He has a really great chapter, especially I think it's chapter 5, where he talks pro-social behavior that looks like change when it's really a lie. So he really gets into that about how to recognize behaviors that are actually manipulations instead of actual efforts to, improve. So those are some things that I think that are really, really helpful. But thank you for that question. It's a really good question. I have two workbooks that you're probably referencing. One is called First Steps to Leaving. That helps you with cognitive dissonance. So if you're really struggling with knowing what's true or accurate, that's a good book to get. It's a workbook. And another really workbook I co-wrote with Lisa Sunny is called Surviving to Thriving, and that helps you heal. So it kind of walks through the top areas that we struggle with healing. All right, other questions. Yeah, it's amazing to me. Someone was just sharing their story about how long they've I always am shocked at how long you guys go between resolution, when you file for divorce or file for custody and when it actually wraps up. Sometimes this goes as long as, like, I've heard definitely, a year seems to be pretty common, but some of you guys go 5, 6 years. It's horrifying how they're able to really drag this through for a very long time. Do I have these books listed somewhere, and could I list them? I don't have them listed somewhere. That's a good question. But you know what? If you sign up for the direct from Carrie or direct from Dr. Carrie on Facebook or Instagram, that channel where I'm communicating with you, I would be happy to include that list. I'd be happy to run that list through there so that you guys have that. So that's a great suggestion. Thank you for that. And that would be a great place to put it. So for those of you who sign up, like I said, it's free. It's my way to communicate directly with you, because here's the truth of the matter. Any social media platform we're on, we don't own that platform. And platform could disappear any day. So if you really want contact, you need to find a way to stay in contact directly with that creator, with the educator. So I really hope that you guys consider, how you're going to do that if you, for God forbid, should lose contact with me in one of these areas that you guys are in. Oh, someone said their divorce took 10 years. I don't know if it was divorce or custody, but it took 10 years. 10 years. Man. Yeah, they will abuse you for forever if they can. It is shocking to me. I got really, really lucky. I don't know why. I mean, I think the God was watching out for me, but the judge took pity on me. I thought I filed for divorce the first week of August, found out I had done it wrong and had not filed. So the paperwork was finished but not submitted. So I resubmitted it the first week or so of September. So I was waiting. I was thinking 6 weeks they'd make a decision. I log in about 6 weeks out to think, oh, they're going to make a decision, to find out I had not done it right, that none of it had been filed. So I refiled it that right like early September. And then they were starting to say I had to go to mediation. And like, really? My son was, ill with leukemia in Texas. That's where I was living. I was like, just got into a studio at that point, just barely got into a studio on my own. And I couldn't imagine flying to another state to meet my ex. And I knew he was going to want to ask for more money. I knew he's going to try to take me for whatever he can. I'm feeling terribly vulnerable. So I happened to call the clerk just to ask a question. I don't remember what the question was I had for her. And she said, I'm not supposed to give you any legal advice, but have you thought to tell the court your situation, that your son is critically ill right now, that he's actively receiving chemotherapy for maybe a life-threatening form of cancer? Have you thought about telling the judge that?" And I said, "No." She goes, "Well, you didn't hear it from me, but I recommend that you file that as a motion." Like, Okay, I'm not even for sure what to write. I'm always one of these people that like want the exact words to put and feel really like stupid. I know you're probably laughing. You're a PhD and you don't know what to say. No, I don't know what to say. And so I somehow stumbled out, because this is before ChatGPT, explanation of what was happening. Sent proof, sent documentation that I had that he was really ill, and then sent it in. And I think that was September. I remember what day it was. And in fact, the anniversary is coming up this month, September 20. I think it's September 21st. I sent it in that morning, and that afternoon I got an email in my mail. Email, obviously, in my inbox. I got an email in my inbox saying, "You're divorced." The judge had seen it that day, and then saw that everything had been filed correctly, that there were no assets in the United States, and he or she signed off on the divorce, and it was over. So I was divorced literally from the date I filed to the divorce was final, was like 2-3 weeks. I know it was totally, unfair, that when I hear somebody like Aaron's case taking 10 years, I mean, it's horrible. In fact, he just wrote in and said he was shocked when it finally happened. He almost expected it would never happen. And it can feel that way. It can really drive you to a very, very hopeless place. Yeah. So Queen Kyla said hers took 4 years. They had 3 kids. Yeah, it's horrible. It's how they can just drag this on and on and on and on. Yeah, it's amazing. Sharing her story about how hers is twisting the story and talking about how she abandoned the home, and that he's been paying for, and he's been locked out for 3 years now. So yeah, it's really amazing how they do that. So what I would do, Sharon, you're asking for advice. What I would do is find documentation that proves it wrong. Become factual. Did you if you've left the home, why did you leave the home? If he's claiming that he should receive the majority of the equity because he's been paying it, show how that's actually not the case. That that's not the arrangement you guys have. That it's community property. So don't get shook up over the words these people are using and the way that they're smearing you and tearing you to pieces. The courts don't care. In fact, if they use those words when they go in front of a judge they look bad. Hope they use those words, because it makes them look really, really bad when they do that. Instead, just become factual. Get out the deed. Show what kind of payments were made. Show the kind of work that you've done. Talk about the history, about why you made the decisions that you've made, and why you've worked or not worked, or how you've supported the home. Be very, very practical, very logical, very factual. Any other questions for me today? Thank you so much for this. I know this is a tough topic. It's never fun to talk about. It's really, really hard. Next week, I want to tell you what we're going to be talking about, so that I hope you join me. For those that don't know, I always go live and we do these educational stuff on for an hour on Tuesdays from 4 to 5 o'clock my time at Central Standard Time. So next week is going to be on. I know what it's on. It's on cognitive dissonance. So next week's going to be talking about why just leaving is bad advice, why victims have a very hard time leaving, why you're struggling to get out. So we're going to talk about that next week. And the question just came, is it better to report crimes during the divorce or after? I don't really know. That's a very technical question. I don't really have a good answer for that. I'm sorry that I can't answer that very well. I'm so good to take on that topic, and great for those in spot. Thank you. Thank you I really appreciate that you like this, and this has been helpful. I'm not an attorney. I always feel a little bit out of my realm when I'm talking about this, because it's not my expertise. I'm way better when I'm in psychology. This is very legal. I'm not a forensic psychologist, so this makes it really tough. What do you do if I work from the same firm in the same room with 4 other people with him? Ooh, that would be rough. I'm sorry to hear that's your situation. Have you thought about trying to get a new job situation, maybe a new working arrangement? If not, I would be the bigger person. I would act like he is not who he used to be to you, and that you have no problem with him. And I would act like you know him no more than you know a neighbor. You go in and act like this is an unknown stranger to you. Be polite, but no more than that. Don't show favoritism, but also don't show where your efforts to avoid him. you know, act like this is how you would treat a person that you show courtesy to that's a stranger. That's the best way for you to show that you're not being controlled by this individual. Well, thank you so much, guys, for this. It was a great live. I really appreciate it. And come back next week. We're going to talk about cognitive dissonance. Like, why is it so hard to leave? What gets in the way of us leaving? We're going to really dig in deep with that next week. So, thank you so much, guys, for this really awesome time together. Really deeply appreciate it.